my name is I work for the GLC in its last 2 years of existence. I worked in industry and employment, where we funded all kinds of projects that had to do with work and employment in London. Looking back at a long working life now, since I've just retired, the GLC was some of the most exciting times I've had at work. It was really good. It was an amazing combination of a radical administration and some very, very talented professionals who were there already, and it delivered a lot of things, and a lot of people, I think, are still quite proud of what the GLC did and what we did then.
My name is Alan Tompkins. I went to the GLC at the end of 1981 and was a chief officer for the Arts Committee from 81 through to 86, so the last days of abolition. Some of it was great fun because I'd never worked in local government, so by wandering around the place and making some dreadful mistakes, I think I set precedents all over the place. I think the lawyers were in hot pursuit of me for the first 6 months.
I'm Sumi Tikaram. I came to London in 1961 and joined the local government straight away, 62. And I worked for the chairman of the Arts and Recreation Committee, a very prominent member called Tony Banks.
An arts committee that at that time only met once a year and gave fair grants of £1 million each to the Royal Opera House, the Royal Festival Hall, the Royal Ballet, in fact any institution with the word Royal in it. And then the Arts Committee shut down for the rest of the year. And the thought that there might be 7 million ratepayers outside of County Hall who hadn't had 10 quid from the council, let alone $1 million, made us start to think about how to break down the barriers. So I established 3 committees: the Community Arts Committee, the Ethnic Arts Committee and the Sports Committee. And each one of them had a budget of nearly £2 million.
I was elected in 1973, I was 28. And after a few months I thought, I want to spend the rest of my life here. It's just the most amazing place. And as I said, at that stage, it was reconstructing London after the war, building roads, homes, cultural centres like the Southbank. It was a real building operation. It wasn't a bureaucracy.
In the end, the lawyers who used to fight me every day finally came to see me and said, look, we're going to give you a seminar on the Local Government Act so you at least use the correct laws to do what you're trying to do. Because I mistakenly thought it was just the establishment trying to scupper everything. And there was also, though it changed, a great deal of racism within the GLC. Trying to get grants out to black organisations was absolutely frightening in the early days. Also to women's groups, particularly lesbian groups, they were chased in the street by the press. And in fact, the most alarming situation was when we were requested by the politician to fund 20 Irish groups, and we received death threats about that, because that whole period of Irish groups, the bombing of Mrs. Thatcher, you know, the IRA visiting County Hall, it was a very explosive area. But these groups had been based in London for over 20 years. They were literature groups, theatre groups, etc. But they were pursued in the street.
When I joined the GLC, it was a different world altogether. Before, I used to say Mr. So-and-so to my boss. But when I joined the GLC, it was Ken by his first name, Tony by his first name. Everybody felt equal. There was no hierarchy or anything. Everybody was treated equally. And I really appreciate it.
My name's Sarah Allen, and when I worked at the GLC, I was straight from university until I was 21 to 25. My name was Sarah Chamberlain, and I was the PA to John McDonnell, who was chair of the F&GP committee and the grants subcommittee, and the deputy leader. And then I went on to be the PA to Peter Brayshaw, who was the Assistant Director General. And I always think it was the pinnacle of my career, really. It was so exciting. We did so many things that changed lives for people. It was just the most fantastic, creative, enjoyable place to work, and we all had... It was such fun and so rewarding, and we were all very young and enthusiastic. It was just fantastic.
The GLC owned 40 parks, historic houses, and the river. It did major things like the Thames Barrier. The overground was funded by Ken 30 years ago. Had it been closed down, it wouldn't be there at all.
Describe something of that last day, March 31st, 1986.
Well, we spent a lot of time planning it. There was a special concert at the Festival Hall. I mean, there were pop concerts actually just outside there where we are now. Events all the way around. It was a really amazing day. The trouble was the weather was really miserable and cold. I mean, if only the weather had been like it is today. But everyone came and they stayed till the end. And there must have been hundreds of thousands of people there. Westminster Bridge was solid. We had a big fireworks display. We had so many old artists and all that. It was amazing. But my problem was my mum had come to it, and she must have been, let me think, 70. It was a bit frail, so I couldn't get completely smashed like everybody else. I had to make sure she didn't fall over.
And who was performing? Do you remember?
I can't remember. We had just so many. I mean, it started at 12 o'clock in the midday, and it went on till midnight. I remember being on the stage at the end of it, and everyone singing "We'll Meet Again." It's taken a long time.
and you were sad when it was abolished?
Very devastated. I was really devastated.
Do you remember much about the day that it was abolished?
Yeah, the day there was a party on the balcony, and we took whatever we could. And at the moment, I have a GLC flag that I took without knowing.
What was interesting, at midnight, after the end of the concert, we went back into my office, and John Carville, the Guardian journalist there, my mum, my partner, and we started just loading stuff up and staggering off home with it, you know. All my paintings and things like that that were up on the walls, things people had given me. And then, of course, although Thatcher had abolished the GLC, the Inner London Education Authority stayed. So, I mean, and their election was up in about 5 weeks. So I was still coming in for the next 5 weeks to my old office because I was a member of the Inner London Education Authority. It was just bizarre, you know.
What was its impact? What were the biggest things that changed after the GLC?
The biggest things was polarization. That Thatcher said, you abolish a useless tier of government because we devolve everything downwards. What I found is the exact opposite. It was 80% of the services were centralized in government in this country, which is one of the most centralized countries in the world, and it still is. And the 20% was sort of withering away or just left. And that was very, very bad for London citizens, because the services meant waste collection, I mean, simple things like that. And they were all, the GLC had a very important role in that, in cooperation with the boroughs, which Thatcher just didn't recognize, including in cooperation with the private sector, which was very, very actively involved in that, especially in innovation. And all that was completely ignored for party political reasons, which I feel is basically scandalous.
And how did you feel when the GLC was abolished in that case?
We were all heartbroken.
Yeah.
We all hated the Tory government, and we would have done anything to get rid of them. When John McDonnell and some of the others, I can't remember who they were now, and they resigned their seats, and we all went and helped them in the by-elections in their boroughs to win their seats back, and that was very exciting, although we weren't supposed to do it. We went in to do all the knocking on the doors, the leafleting in work time, but it was good.
what do you think is the most important legacy of the GLC that people should know about?
Well, I mean, I think the legacy of the GLC is London's rebuilding after the war. It laid the foundation for the incredibly dynamic city we now are. If I was to think of the legacy of my administration, it's on all these issues which people thought so outrageous then, equal rights for homosexuals, women, black people. I mean, now you have a Tory Prime Minister coming up with gay marriage. We were just 30 years ahead of our time.
I think there are a lot of lessons, maybe not in the current political climate that there'll be a resurgence of the GLC type initiative, but I think for governance of a city like London, which was in very deep trouble at the time, I think it really tried to do a lot of things.
It's not one generation which has forgotten about it, it's probably two. And of course we have the London Mayor and the Assembly and so forth, so one has to see a need for a London-wide coordination, policy, whatever, which I think is right. The format is, I'm not sure, but anyway, it's there. So I think people of today, like you, your generation, should work with them and take them to account and make sure that there is some kind of coordination across London of the services and access to services, which is absolutely vital.
Nobody, I think, understands the massive amount of property that the GLC owned, not only through the Arts Committee, through the Transport Committee, and some people say what was really behind Mrs Thatcher's motive was the biggest property rip-off in history. A large number of groups and properties were handed over to the boroughs and were sold, including County Hall itself and the Southbank. Now it's owned by a property company.
People are pushed out of living in London because of that kind of polarisation, and I think that is absolutely not tenable in the city, and that is why I think any mayor of London and the Assembly, which is very weak by the way by statute, should be able to have a bigger role in reconnecting the kind of way of life which should be accessible.
It's sad because some of the things Ken did, which was allowing for the first time the public to come into County Hall and walk the corridors and participate in the committees, was unprecedented.
We are increasing the numbers of population. With whom? With the bankers, with the insurers, investment by Qataris taking over the whole of Mayfair. I mean, is that what we want, or do we want to have a city which is so-called cosmopolitan, etc., where we can actually live together, and even the very rich people need somebody to polish their shoes. So.